A few games in store for you today. I will try to go back and look. There were a couple games I lost the other day. I've been very sick and I was fairly miserable, and I tried to play anyway. And this is a high skill deck with very little margin for error in any given game. And I was not playing error free and lost those games. But maybe if I show you how I lost them, it'll help in the sense that maybe you won't make the same dumb mistakes. Plus, I don't want to always do highlight reels of just wins. But having said that, today I haven't lost as far as I can remember. We'll see soon. And the last game is also kind of a fun little finisher, so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, I have been playing with this one card slot, which was Seal of Cleansing. Then it became Archmage's Charm. It's been Vandal Blast. It was Tail's End, and now it's actually back to being a Felwar Stone, at least for now. Basically, Talisman of Creativity bumped the Felwar Stone out of the deck, but the thing is, the more 2-drops that produce additional mana, the better for this deck. I actually have it in my mind that possibly Felwar Stone and Talisman of Creativity could actually be the black-white signets instead of the Talisman Felwar Stone. That's possibly an argument. Another card that Felwar Stone could replace might be Search for Azcanta, even though it doesn't work great with Winter Orb. This deck cheats the Orb pretty hard, pretty often. And then Search, it kind of fits that semi-role of being an additional mana source, but also with some long-term potential. Although I think Throne of the High City is doing what Search might have done for this deck. Ultimately, what it comes down to, though, is that there are a lot of rewards for having early colorless mana, or a lot of cards that you use to go get Mana Crypt or Soul Ring, and you want a lot of rewards for that. Felwar Stone, you can curve right into a Soul Ring Felwar Stone draw, and you're way ahead. Plus, a turn 3 Breya, in a lot of cases, will shut down the opponent's offense long enough to let you do the rest of what you need to do with your deck. With that in mind, I am strongly considering whether or not Felwar actually makes more sense than just running the signets. In particular, the Diner Signet and the Azorius Signet. Over, say, like the Talisman of Creativity and the Felwar Stone. That might actually make more sense. The thing about it is, as much as I love the fact that these cards can produce mana the turn you play them, so you can go land, Soul Ring, tap it for Talisman, tap it for Brainstorm or Sensei's Divining Top or something along those lines. It's pretty nice, and this does slow you down. But on the other hand, converting that colorless mana into colored mana at some point in the game can be really nice as well. For now, I think I'm going to leave it with Felwar and Talisman, but I want to keep this in mind and try to pay attention to how often I might prefer having these other cards in the deck. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So, unfortunately, Tail's End and Archmage's Charm, I can talk about them another time, I suppose, but what it comes down to ultimately is that they're really good effects, but they're very situational. Archmage's Charm is just difficult to cast in this deck. A Cryptic Command can completely buy you, it can be a time walk almost, it can buy you an entire turn. Your opponent's going to attack for relief, you tap all their cards and draw a card. That's one thing, but in Archmage's Charm, well, it's as lovely as it is to steal a Soul Ring. If they've had it, if you're going second, they go land, Soul Ring, and then you go land, hopefully all of them produce blue, and then you Archmage's Charm. They've already tapped for 6 extra mana, and it's still pretty good. Maybe even game-winning, but maybe not. It's a bit slow. And another way to keep up with the Soul Ring might just be to play an extra mana rock somewhere in there so that you go land mana source, and then you're only behind by 1 mana, and you can potentially get back into the game. So that's kind of the thinking there. And then as far as Tail's End goes, it's nice, it's good, but it can be dead. And a card that isn't always good is the exact kind of card we're trying to pull out of this deck. If it's not always good, there has to be a reason you're running it. Necropotence isn't always good, but when it's good, it's BBB win the game. Tail's End or whatever it was, that's not the case with that card, right? So it's not always good, and it doesn't win the game when you do play it. I mean, Cyclonic Rift would be a better card than Tail's End if you want it at the same cost. A card that's not always good, but when it's good, Rift can win the game. Tail's End, not so much. I suppose it can if you get it just right, just early enough, and you hit that mana source, and then your opponent concedes in frustration. But do we really want to play for that? If I do, I should run Stifle over Tail's End first, and then consider Tail's End. And I'm not running Stifle. So, all right, I'm going to take a look at some games, and hopefully you'll enjoy watching these games play out. They're pretty fun, actually. All right, so we'll take a look at games from today, last 7 days. All right, so because we rolled over into tomorrow. All right, so I've got all the games from the 13th, I believe, were wins, except for this one here. And then I had, I remember this, a little bit frustrating, and then we moved into some wins. And you can see on 11th where I've been sick, right? And I've been playing like garbage, and you can see a couple of losses. So I'm actually going to do loss, the most losses that I've had recently, and then we will move into the wins. Losses are painful for me. I always am frustrated with myself when they happen, but maybe there's something we can learn from them. Maybe there's something I can learn from them. That's probably the most important thing. I think here, though, it was just, I remember this, against Krenko. When it has the Stone Cold Nuts against me, but I actually have interaction, and I should be able to deal with this Krenko deck off of this play right there. But instead of doing what I need to do in order to win, I don't. Why did I not get Umezawa's Jitte there? What am I doing? My opponent has Ancient Tomb into Krenko, already getting punished for that. This is not good. I run out Breya here, and my opponent gets to equip the bracers, make just unbelievable amounts of goblins, and I draw Swords to Plowshares. So all I've got to do here to get back in the game is Swords to Plowshares. All I have to do is Swords to Plowshares. Instead, I make this play, and right there I could have plowed the Krenko, and I'm back in the game. I'm going to pause it. If I'd applied the Krenko there, this doesn't happen. My opponent would have, 11 guys? And I have 2 blockers. And then on my turn, I can muddle for Demonic and Demonic for Broad Sweep. But instead, I don't plow it. My opponent gets Skull Clamp, makes that many goblins, gives them all haste because, like I said, my opponent had the Stone Cold Nuts. And I lose because even though there's no way I should lose in this match, or in this game for that matter, you can always throw a game by playing like trash. And I did. So I deserved it, and we move on to a game against Mad Cow Chicken. So then I got a few wins, sloppy wins too, still playing poorly. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if my opponent doesn't play well and I play poorly, I'll probably win. But if my opponent plays well and I play poorly, I'll probably lose, and I deserve to. And they deserve to win for playing me. So, as painful as it is, it's always good to get humbled a little bit, because you get very arrogant playing this deck, and that's the easiest way to lose. And rightfully so. So anyway, my opponent's got a pretty nutty start with a Mana Breach, and why would I have kept the hand that I kept? My hand is such trash, and again, just misplaced City here. So whenever anyone plays a spell after a turn of land, and then this thing lets them cheat lands into play, so it's like this opponent drew the natural combo. The problem is I can actually play around this if I were smarter about what I'm doing. Right here, so I've got Demonic Tutor. I can just go get Disenchant, play Command Tower, disenchant that thing, and crawl my way back into the game. Instead, I try to be cute, and cute is not going to cut it. My opponent basically gets to go crazy with their commander. So right here, if I could have just disenchanted that thing, I would have one land in play, and because the Crypt wouldn't have picked up a land, And with that thing down, I could have crawled my way back into the game, potentially. I mean, obviously, this is an insane start from my opponent against a hand that should have been a mulligan, frankly, but yeah. It just gets more and more absurd, right? So my opponent's going to play a guy's cradle here. I mean, at some point, maybe I could have got into this game from here. I don't even know if that's feasible. If I Enlightened Tutor for... if I drew an island, I suppose, I could have Enlightened Tutor for Shackles and then slowly try to Shackles, but then Shackles would end up taking Spellskite. I would have had to force it. So I don't know. But basically, I'm hosed, right? Like, I'm done in that game. And lastly, the very first game I played this morning, and probably should have... I don't even remember how I lost. But I think I still had Tail's End in at this point as well. Not the Fellwar Stone. But a game against Port the Raid Mother. Oh, yeah. Again, so... I chalked up my 2 losses of the date from a couple of days ago to illness, which is potentially true, but also arrogance. However, I didn't, and I say that now, however, I did not consider it to be an arrogance problem at the time. I strictly wanted to blame it on illness and take basically no responsibility for why I had lost. Excuse me. Which is an absolute terrible trait. And because of that, excuse me, I played this game fairly arrogantly as well. And as you'll see, it's going to cost me the entire game. Just thinking, what can my opponent do? I'll just leave a Terravor there. I'll just deal with it using the sword, right? I won't equip, I won't move my sword here onto my Breya or anything. You know, why would I do that? Opponent plays Destructive Force. I have 2 Force of Wills I can hit here. I find neither. Oh, I get a Tail's End. No, that's cute. Not a Fellwar Stone. And my board is wiped. And Terravor is going to kill me right now. Like, how stupid do you have to play that game to lose with the kind of draw that I had? Well, that stupid is the answer. I mean, I didn't even have to factor fiction. I could have just killed the Terravor in response to the Destructive Force using Breya's ability and just taken the thing out. And then this game would have been fine. My opponent would have had 2 mana. I would have had 3. And we would have carried on with our game. And in a turn or 2, I would have rolled all that stuff back into play in 1. But nope. Sorry. Nope, I had to get cocky, and so I get punished. So I took a few minutes of a break between games and came back and sat down. First of all, I believe at that point I swapped Tail's End for Fellwar, but if we see Tail's End, it's going to be a Fellwar pretty soon. I wanted more mana sources, but ultimately I tried to treat every opponent with the seriousness they deserve. So what it comes down to is games like that, where I get punished for being cocky, that brings me back to reality, but also causes me to play my opponents as if we're playing in an event or something, where I'm trying to completely destroy them as quickly and efficiently as possible while making no mistakes. And so when I play the casual crowd, they tend to really hate that. But the reason for it is that, as you can see, like, the opponent's decks were super gimmicky casual crap, right? And I got destroyed by them. Because if you don't take the opponent seriously, you'll lose. It's very possible. There's always a card that can beat you in Magic. So when I don't take the casuals seriously, I get crushed as if it's a tournament. And then I feel twice bad. Well, 3 times maybe. Once I feel bad for being too cocky and basically being the source of my own defeat, partially. 2, I feel bad because I lost to a casual deck with my, serious deck, right? And then 3, I feel bad because I lost in general. I hate losing. Like, I just really dislike it. But I do Sorry. I do appreciate losing to a quality deck quite a bit more than I do to casual nonsense. So, anyway, here, you see I've got a game that's a little bit risky against Animar. Not the best start to deal with that card right now. My opponent's going to start getting counters on it. I'm going to stall here. And then for no reason I can understand, my opponent just concedes. Now, excuse me. I do have cryptic commands, so at some point I can cryptic this back into my opponent's hand. But I don't fully understand what the concession was here. I think that's incredibly early. I'm under a lot of pressure here. Things aren't looking that great for me in that game. And yeah, I don't fully get what my opponent was doing there. Of course, at some point I could use my 1-1 there to tutor up a Enlightened Tutor, or a Mystical Tutor rather, and go get Toxic Deluge. That was, I think, the plan ultimately, but yeah, I think that was a bit early. Anyway, this opponent is playing Diesel Herald's playing Golos, Tireless Pilgrim. And I have a barely acceptable start. A little bit slow. My opponent's getting some men on the table. 3 vids is pretty good when you're running dual lands. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take a look. And before we can continue, another conceder. That sucks. Well, I was going to at least get my... what I was going to try to do there, of course, is look for a blue card to protect my Planeswalker and then get my Planeswalker into play. Anyway, this opponent, Hand of Chaos, is playing Sidisi, and I've got a very nice hand. Not of Chaos, but a very nice hand nonetheless. My opponent vamps, and I don't know what they went and got here, because they've certainly mana ramped, and I'm regretting not having played the land last turn, but I can make up for it with an Ancient Tomb here. Alright, top decking a Mox is real nice there. Because now I have an active Opal, and I can go get a Strip Mine. Go ahead and take out that untapped mana there. And just pass for the turn. And now I'm in the driver's seat. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and use the Wayfarer one more time and just let the Marauder go ahead and take it out, because it's done plenty of good work. Sadly, my opponent gets a bog down, but I'm not too bogged down by the play. I'm able to get Urza into play, and of course that means I can counterspell right now. I've actually got 4 mana up. I could have played Jace there, but I figured I could wait one more turn and just run it out now. Alright, yeah, this is getting fairly absurd, of course. Go ahead and fabricate for a Soul Ring, play the Soul Ring off my Construct, attack for 1, and I've still got a counterspell up, believe it or not. See, because I can tap the Winter Orb for blue and the Soul Ring for blue. Meanwhile, I am not getting affected by the Winter Orb at all, so my opponent is just falling way behind. Breya, of course, now taps for triple blue and gives my Construct +3/+3. So we'll just lay the beings down, and as you can see, Urza Winter Orb is as absolutely disgustingly broken as as the theory craft would state that it should be. And it was someone who pointed out in the comments of one of my videos a while back when I was first talking about Urza. They actually picked up on the interaction before I did. I'm 100% sure I would have picked up on it if I'd gotten it into play with Winter Orb in a game, but the fact that the individual had figured that out just by thinking about it was pretty cool, and actually what caused me to force Urza into the deck just to try and see what that interaction would be like, and thank goodness I did. Not just for that interaction, but for the fact that if you look at it, Urza right now, besides beating my opponent in the face with a 10/10, it taps for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 6 mana if I want it to be. But even if I don't use all 6, like for example I hit him in the face with a 10/10, it's still tapping Winter Orb, which is producing which is cheating on my lands. But setting that aside, 1 blue, 2 blue, 3 blue, 4 blue mana right there. Totally crazy. You notice I'm sitting here with a Soul Ring untapped and a Vedokin Shackles, and I'm like, okay, I have counterspell up, And if my opponent plays a creature, well, I'll just tap the Soul Ring and shackles it. Like, just gross. I love Urza, so that was a mega win for this deck. Alright, speaking of wins, let's try this game against Penguin Warcry, who's running Omnath, Locus of Rage, and I've got a pretty strong keep against a deck like that if it doesn't die right off the bat, which it did not. Go ahead and preordain here and pass, because there's always a chance my opponent has a rampant growth, and taking that opportunity is always a bigger payout than chipping in for 1 point of damage. And as it turns out, my opponent does have it, so I get to tutor for a workshop, run out Sword, equip, smash, take a card, and set up a Mana Leak plus Winter Orb, my opponent right now. So I've got Orb. So this is turn 3, and I, with just the power of a Wayfarer, was able to set up Orb, Sword, Lock against this opponent, all because I didn't attack for 1. I thought that was pretty cool, and it's definitely a technical play that you should consider making. If you ever play a Wayfarer against a green deck, don't get in chip damage. Just sit on the Wayfarer, because if they do anything to rampant growth, they immediately get punished. You can either strip mine the land right away, or you can do something like this. Far more valuable to be able to do something like that, right? So I thought that was cool, and is also a good sign that my play is getting back on track, right? So some very poor play that I showed you in the beginning, but as you'll see, I think in the rest of these games I actually played very well. I will point out mistakes, so if I make them. Alright, so I've got an early Stoneforge against Urza, an Urza deck, which is always quite strong. Being able to tear into my opponent's hand with their mono blue deck is a very powerful thing indeed. Top deck of Workshop, which means I can actually hardcast this now, and we can fight over it. But no need, my opponent doesn't have a counter, so I'll just tap him for some damage and then follow up with a Breya. Opponent's in mega trouble here. Playing Mirrodin Besieged, which it doesn't do anything. Anyway, I'm going to float some mana on Fiery Islet. After damage, I'm going to sack the Fiery Islet to draw a card. I could have disenchanted the Mirrodin Besieged, and I suppose that I would have at some point, but as you can see, I found a Winter Orb. Again, Sword Orb combo lock game. So the Sword Orb or Urza Orb, both super, super powerful ways to lock the game out. Sword Orb is even better than Urza Orb because it takes cards out of their hand, so it removes options, but Urza Orb is insane anyway. Alright, as far as power level. Alright, Blazing 21, somebody running Krenko too. How am I going to do? Well, I can tell you this, I'm going to take it seriously. Alright, so I keep a hand that's got some potential. Obviously, my opponent's got some weird thing going with Ultra the Brood. This is definitely not a first turn Soul Ring. Anyway, speaking of Soul Ring, I'll go ahead and get mine. And I was considering making a second, but I felt it was much safer to hold up a Mana Leak here, and I decided Brainstorm in response to Cold Steel Heart is appropriate. And when I don't see land, I realize I have to let them have the Cold Steel Heart so that I can clone it, so I can name black, so that I can Demonic Tutor and Yawgmoth's Will as need be. Opponent runs out, sort of, is playing a I'm going to fire my lasers deck. They're running a bunch of other nonsense out there to get ready to eventually get me with their commander. Of course, this time I'm not stupid and I go get her Umezawa's Jitte like I should. Force the Krenko, which is another play that I didn't have. It wasn't an option in the last game. Throw down a Sword. I'm about to smash in for 3, take a card out of my opponent's hand, drop him to 1 card in hand, untap my lands, including the Strip Mine. Strip Mine my opponent. And then Merchant Scroll and pass, setting myself up for a really delightful Yawgmoth's Will a turn later. Yawgmoth's Will, when you have Sword of Feast and Famine, is just phenomenal, because you can tap all your lands, will attack, untap all your lands, and, you can tap all your lands, will, play a land from the graveyard, do something like cast Brainstorm, attack, untap all of the lands, and then continue to cast, stuff like Demonic Tutor, Night Tutor, and so forth. So, pretty gross, and was going to be very fun, but my opponent gives up before we get there. And I don't blame him. I mean, I had double active equipment. One of which was Jete and completely stops goblins, and my opponent's deck was somewhat janky there. Anyway, Sharm the Hegemons. I don't feel like that was even. That didn't make up for the loss from before, but it did still feel nice. Anyway, opponent's playing Sharm the Hegemon. More to the extent, actually, I don't even know if it felt nice. It didn't feel bad though, which was an improvement. Anyway, I've got a decent start. It's good against control. I ran out the Mox Opal early because, first of all, if my opponent was crazy enough to disenchant that thing. All right, I'm going to pause. My opponent was crazy enough to disenchant that thing. I have much better targets, and it wasn't doing anything for me anyway, so I was going to be happy with that. But on the other hand, I ran out the Opal because my opponent did something crazy like, or gross like, play a land, play a Soul Ring, play a Time Twister. I force it, they force back. At least I would have one more prominent play. Anyway, on my opponent's turn, they play Ashiok. People have asked me to play this card. It's certainly a threat in the control matchup, but it's such garbage in the aggro matchup. So this is going to force me to become the aggro. And you can see I top decked the Felwar Stone that I brought. Now, this is not Tail's End, right? It's a Felwar. And it's so much better that it's a Felwar Stone right here. Anyway, or at least I think it is. We'll see. So my opponent, I can't search, so I have to be careful about what I do here. And my opponent just took out Demonic Tutor and Jace, along with a couple other cards that don't matter much. So pretty bad news. I'm able to get out a Cavern of Souls, though, and make an uncounterable Breya. So even though I can't search, I'm threatening my opponent's Planeswalker. They hit me again with it and take out Strip Mine, Cephalid Colosseum, Sensei's Dividing Top, and Toxic Deluge. Sucks about the Strip Mine in particular because, of course, in the Colosseum as well, either one of those can contribute to a hard lock, a soft lock rather, but it's basically game over. My opponent wastes time playing Sword of the Meek, so they've got a lot of weird situational cards. So I send in like this, face, and then Ashiok. Opponent plays Breya. I just let it happen, follow up with an uncounterable Breya, and then immediately kill Ashiok. We'll get enough of that using the 2-tap Thopters and pass. So the power of mana production there, doing good things for me. Opponent plays a Courier's Capsule and Aethersworn Canonist, so kind of a weird one to see there, but not too much of a problem. I'm going to go ahead and play Throne of the High City, use it, and then kill the Canonist. I get to draw an extra card. My opponent just draws a couple of cards for their turn, but theirs is not permanent. I'm going to go ahead and beat in with Breya here. Merchant Scroll for mana drain because I like the situation I'm in. My opponent Vampiric Tutors. I pick up a Skull Clamp off of the Throne of the High City. So Throne of the High City is my Ashiok's really good against control and terrible against aggro. Throne is really good against control and terrible against aggro. But one of them produces mana and is an easy to slot into the deck. The other one costs mana and is difficult to slot into the deck. There's a reason why I'm playing Throne here, and I think that it's superior. I suppose you could run both if you really want, but anyway, this play on my opponent's turn, I don't feel like it makes much sense. They saw me go get Merchant Scroll for Mana Drain. I guess in some ways it makes sense because Mana Drain on a 2-drop is a lot better than Mana Drain on a more expensive card. But still, yeah, I'm not sure that I like it. If they were pinning their entire game on getting this into play, well, at any rate, they were probably buried under cards and mana, and it probably didn't matter. Maybe that's what they were thinking. Somehow I would let it through, but no, not happening there. Anyway, my opponent here is playing Edgar Markov, and I have to mulligan. Fortunately, the new mulligan rules are in effect, and I decide this is the best hand that I can put together to potentially do well against an Edgar Markov. I keep the Mox Opal because acceleration is so key, and being able to use Breya is incredibly important. Unfortunately, my opponent gets a Soul Ring here, so this is not the greatest situation for me. Alright, so I'm going to set up here and pass for the turn. Opponent runs out Exquisite Blood. Fortunately, opponent's not pressuring me. They're down to only 2 cards in hand. And that's going to let me do some nice things here, which basically involve getting lots and lots of mana. So opponent doesn't get the other combo into play, which would... there's a 2-card combo with Exquisite Blood, and I think it's like Sanguine Bond or something. It's a 2-card Living the Dream combo where you just win the game. Well, that didn't happen. Alright, so my opponent plays this, and in response to Edgar's trigger, I plow the creature, and then it somehow causes Edgar not to trigger. It says invalid target or something. I actually don't fully understand what happened there, but there's nothing I can do about it anyway. I'm going to play a Throne here and pass. I've got a Remand up, so I don't want to sack the Throne right away. But even though Throne is bad against aggro, you can absolutely get in positions like this where Throne is totally appropriate to use. And if you use a Throne against aggro, it's probably because you probably won the game, right? So we're going Spellseeker for a Demonic, and then DT for a Will, because I have a juicy graveyard over there. Find myself an Urza and pass for the turn. Opponent runs a Drana out, a very expensive vampire to be playing right here. I'm going to remand it even though my opponent gets a vampire, and then I'm going to kill their other vampire, sacking the Crypt, so I don't have to worry about that. And because I can replay, off of the Will, I can replay all that cheap mana. So I think we're probably bugging out here. Yeah, we're bugging out. It's a bug game. But basically, I think you can imagine how this game goes from here. I will spew a ton of mana into play, get extra artifact, get extra lands, treachery, their token just to untap all my lands and get more colored mana, demonic tutor. I think I twist away their hand, or maybe, I don't know, it was some crazy combination of things, and then eventually I Imperial Seal for a Wasteland or something along those lines. I mean, at that point, it's completely academic how you win. So anyway, Clan Breya is the next opponent, and they are running Gadok Teague. And I always enjoy facing Gadok Teague decks, because I always feel like in my opponent's head, I'm going to pause right here. Let's take a look at how good my opponent started. So I've had to mulligan. I guess I did keep a 7-mana hand. But I've got a hand that I thought would be acceptable. Umazo's Jitte will eventually take out Teague permanently. And a Trinket Mage with the map where I would have time to go get some extra mana sources and put something together. Looking pretty good, but look at my opponent's turn 1. They put 4 mana into play and drew an extra card. This suddenly got quite a bit scarier. Anyway, like I was saying, I always like playing against Gadok Teague, because I always assume that my opponent looks at my deck and thinks, man, this is going to be so good against this blue mage. Control decks? Oh, look at this. My opponent has Soul Ring as well. So 7 mana to my 2. And they have Teague in play. So I should totally lose, right? Well, maybe. But we'll see. I can, at the very least, ramp up here. I probably should have jumped a Felwar Stone into play and set up for an Enlightened Tutor. I'm unsure why I made that play there. So I said I'd point out misplays. I believe that had to have been one. Unless this is a bug game. And if it is, it'll be a little disappointing. Yeah, we're bugged. We're bugged. That's a bummer. Obviously, I'm not playing Treachery here. I can't with the Gadok Teague, but yeah, I don't know what went wrong here. Basically, over the course of this game, I played Breya. My opponent kept naming an artifact with World Queller. So, like, they killed tokens of mine, killed their own artifact mana. It got pretty bad for my opponent. They ended up beating me down with a World Queller, and then finally I tutored up a solution and took it off the board. After letting them kind of like flap around with it for a little while. They beat me down pretty hard with it, but I focused on their mana and then dealt with the World Queller as a cleanup effect. So, unfortunately, bugged game, but the beginning you got to see, and it was pretty crazy. So it was a satisfying win. We could say that. Beating a Gadok Teague with, what did I say? It was 7 mana to my 2 and a Teague in play. was super awesome. Anyway, so the next game here against Red Eye Dayango, playing Warp the Raid Mother. I've got a sick start, like grossly powerful start. Quite happy to see a Felwar there. I decided to go with Wayfarer over charging for Necro because it's still a little early, and my opponent then misses a land drop, so kind of punishes me. But that's okay, because I can do this and run out Narset. And if my opponent's not paying attention, that Sensei's Divining Top, they're going to be very disappointed when they activate, if they activate Sensei's Divining Top on their turn. Anyway, my opponent takes a look at their top 3 cards, and either there's no land there. I don't know why they do it during their upkeep, though. This is just the dumbest thing. Do it after you draw and then take a look. But anyway, having said that, it makes no sense to look at one less card. But that's what they do, and I guess they see no lands and concede. So not very exciting of a victory, but it could have shaped out to be a really fun game. Anyway, I don't play the early Necro, by the way, in that setup, because Necroing for 1 or 2, it's not real exciting. The best thing to do with Necro is to dump the rest of your cards and then refill. Treat it as a draw 7, roughly, and then win from there. So my opponent's probably not happy with getting early mana screwed. Just replays me right after that. And this time they're playing Shieldred, so I assume that means this time they brought their good deck. And we'll see how this game plays. But I've got a really nice early start with defensive capabilities, a Narset, good mana ramp. Just a lot of good things happening here. Narset, of course, being an answer, effective near disenchant. My opponent gets an arena. I Narset into Mana Drain, which is savage. My opponent gets a Burnished Heart, and I Narset into a Blau. Just gross, right? And then they run out of tutor into the Mana Drain that I showed them, which is amazing. I draw Force of Negation, and my opponent concedes. I was super bummed that they conceded because, well, it's one of those, no, come back, I'm not finished killing you yet type of situations, but, not that I blame them, but, so if they hadn't, Mana Drain plays Thran Dynamo. Dynamo, Tundra, Volcanic plays Teferi. I immediately draw a card. If I don't hit a land, then I'm done. And at the end of my opponent's turn, I can Impulse, and I have a counterspell ready to go, and I've got Force of Negation with a copy artifact up if they've got 2 plays like a Duress or a Hymn into something else that matters. Amazing setup there, and I was really looking forward to playing that out, but clearly my opponent was not. Anyway, Breya 2 here. It's playing Krenko, Tin Street, Kingpin. By the way, that was one game illustrating how good Narset is. And Narset is incredible in this deck. I honestly believe it's got to be a staple card for blue decks. Anyway, here I'm just going to set up to kill Skirk Prospector as soon as possible, but get a blocker into play. My opponent kind of inexplicably runs their commander, sacks their guy, and runs their commander into Duretti's activated ability. This confuses me, to say the least. Anyway, on my turn, I was going to go ahead and just cast Breya, but my opponent concedes before. I don't know if they realized they made a mistake or what. So I was going to play Breya here, and they can't play a hasted Goblin and run it in. Like, it makes it almost impossible for them to do anything. And then on the next turn, I just keep ticking up the ready. And of course, I'll get Narset out as soon as I'm able, and start picking up extra cards while I'm at it. The game was basically over, but I just thought that was really interesting. My next opponent here is Shubin 1, playing Edric, and I've got a mulligan. Not something you want to be doing against Edric, and I've got a terrible hand, which is not something you want to see against Edric either. This is bad all around. My opponent gets an early Soul Ring. This is so bad for me. So I'm going to have to actually go fetch a Tundra and not get a 2-for-1 on Tithe, so that I can copy the Soul Ring and potentially get back in the game. Now, if I could find a black source, I might be alright. Anyway, my opponent runs out Dryad Arbor Baral. This is heinously bad for me. And I can't do anything here. But I figured they were going to go Edric and attack. Instead, they have Carpet of Flowers. My goodness, this is just so bad for me. I'm not drawing extra cards yet, but now they've got another Soul Ring and a Sylvan Library into a Priest of Titania. This is like every gross OP card that my opponent could possibly have basically come into the party. Alright, so I have to actually throw away a Cephalid Colosseum and keep Thrombodai City, even though it's incredibly weak against Edric, because it's the only way I have to recover cards here, and I'm super low on cards. Anyway, my opponent plays a Caterpillar and tries to kill my Soul Ring, and I'm about to sack the Caterpillar and the Thopter and figure out what I want to kill on my opponent's side of the board. Baral, Priest, or what, or just Edric. I was actually considering most likely killing Priest, and then whether or not I was gonna, and what I was gonna try to do is on the next turn vindicate the Sylvan Library off the board, and then from there I've got a Thopter and a Breya set up to block. And I could possibly even sack and kill the Dryad Arbor at some point. So it's actually okay, and maybe that's why my opponent conceded. Like, they want to be winning at that point, not playing a draw-go game. But anyway, it all worked out, I guess. And I move on to the next game. I have to play Nico Han. That was definitely a close one, though. So I take a mulligan and end up keeping this hand here. And I decided to keep Mox Diamond because as soon as I can get some extra cards going, the Mox Diamond has, it's got major upside. Anyway, when I preordained, I saw a Strip Mine in Latent Tutor, so I chose to keep both because, well, I needed the mana, but I also needed the mana. So anyway, here you can see I run out Felwar Stone. Of course, Felwar Stone at this point will tap for any color mana thanks to my opponent's Chromatic Lantern. So first thing I'm going to tap for is blue and cast a counter on their Mayo, the Anima. Anyway, and my opponent just concedes. So kind of lame there considering how far behind I was, but I expect they were likely to concede next turn anyway. As you can see, I don't know what I was going to draw, but eventually I'll draw a land, of course, and I get to throw the Mox Diamond down. And more importantly, though, I get to go Strip Mine, Crucible, Strip Mine again, pass, leaving my opponent at 2 mana, and of course my Felwar Stone until still tapping for any color mana. Pretty good there, and I guess I feel like my opponent should have waited for the next turn to concede, but they definitely had a concede coming. Anyway, Purple Nurple here, running the Mimeoplasm, is going first, and leads off with a tapped Swamp, basically, off an Evolving Wilds. I get to Imperial Seal, rather, on my turn instead. Opponent's turn 2, they get a Tropical into a Nezumi Grave Robber, but I get a turn 2 Dark Confidant off the Seal. I decided that was the way to go, since I can get more mana with this. And my opponent starts beating me down pretty hard, pretty fast, pretty early in this game. And this is looking a little dangerous. They go for a Wonder here. I'm going to go ahead and remand. I'm digging for mana, basically. I'm taking 4+ damage per turn. So pretty nasty beats here. Opponent then makes a play that I don't fully understand. So they run Mind's Aglow. I make sure I understand how the card works, and I just take the one card. So they run out Wonder, right? And I'm going to go ahead and Snapcaster and then remand it. And my opponent runs their 4/2 into my Snapcaster, like the best possible play that they could make for me, and they make it. So I don't know what was going on there, but at this point, my opponent is way behind. I'm going to go ahead and throw away a Mox and a Grim because I'm hoping to will them back into play at some point. So I'll go ahead and do that now. And using Vampiric, I can will into a Winter Orb, and my opponent concedes against a 10 life Dark Confidant beatdown. But if they hadn't, then on the next turn, of course, I get to run out my Commander, and that'll quickly get rid of Winter Orb as well as Dark Confidant, depending on either one that I needed to do. Most likely, I can just get rid of Confidant with my commander at some point, if I absolutely had to. And so I guess Purple Norpal was going to lose there, but I don't know if I'd been them. I would have stuck around. 10 life is pretty low with the Dark Confidant. There's not a lot of things you can do with the Luna Ore about. Anyway, Romulus the Wolf here is playing Ilharg the Raised Boar. There's a lot of text, and I don't know what it says exactly, but it doesn't say uncounterable, and it costs 5 mana, so I figure if I can keep my opponent off 5 mana, then I don't have to worry about what the card actually does. So opponent plays a Stronic Resonator here. I don't remember that that's actually what happened, but maybe it was. I must have remanded just to dig for mana sources. And remanded to an Ancient Tomb. Yeah, I guess that was what happened. My opponent runs out Sundial of the Infinite. I don't understand what's going on. I take no joy in laying this beat down, but it's always good to practice, right? Again, I'm not going to take it not seriously and then get crushed and feel super embarrassed, right? So I'm going DT here, and I could get a Strip Mine. So I'm going to using Sensei's Divining Top. I'm playing around with Sensei's Divining Top here a little bit, so I'm going to Vindicate a Mountain off the board, Snapcaster the Vindicate a Mountain off the board, play Strip Mine, strip a Mountain off the board, and at this point my opponent feels like the game might be over. I think at this point they may be correct. What did they say? Something about good. I think they just said good game. Yeah, good game. So polite opponent, but triple LD in the single turn was enough for them against where they had 1 mana and I had 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 mana to 1. A 15 to 1 mana ratio is probably a good reason to concede. Alright, lastly I get this game against Manowar 666, and this one's quite enjoyable as well. My opponent is playing Scion of the Ur-Dragon. I have to mulligan, but I mulligan to this. And it's got Sensei's Divining Top and a fetch land, so could be alright. Opponent has first turn nothing, tap my land and pass. I hate that habit. Turn 2 they play Simic Growth Chamber, and I peek with Sensei's Divining Top and find nothing I want. And what I want is something to interact with that Growth Chamber, and I find Vampiric Tutor. So upkeep, I'm going to go ahead and activate top, respond by topping, respond by Vampiric Tutoring, resolve the top after I've searched, and set up my next turn as well, which involves me picking up a Yawgmoth's Well there. Opponent plays out a couple turns later. My opponent's got Lightning Greaves in play and plays out a Boros Garrison. Oh goodness, friend, not what you want to be doing. I'm going to go ahead and Mystical Teachings for a Cryptic Command. Not what you want to be doing against me. Anyway, tithe and then bounce my opponent's Boros Garrison. Opponent has to discard due to an overly full hand, a problem that I assisted them with, of course, with the Cryptic. I run out of Gilded Lotus into a Dark Confidant. My opponent plays a tap land and passes. I go ahead and find a Scrub and not much else, so I will Cryptic their untapped Forest into play, attack, pass for the turn. Vampiric Tutor, sorry. And then pass for the turn. I should have tithed first, by the way, and then pre-Vampiric, and I realized my mistake afterwards, so I'm not going to get the free land. So I vamped for a Tezzeret. I wasteland him, and then Tezzeret. On this turn, I wasteland him, and then on the next turn, I take 5 from Tezzeret, but I use Tezzeret to go get map, and I map for a Strip Mine, and I kill my opponent's land. Opponent plays a come to play tap land again. Dark Confidant finds nothing, so during my upkeep I have Mystical Teachings for a Mystical Tutor, and I find myself a Vindicate. We go ahead and run out a Coalition Relic into Tezzeret, producing me some extra mana, and I Vindicate their land and attack for 2, leaving a remand up, and I pass. Opponent plays a tapped land. Go ahead and charge my Relic, hit nothing useful whatsoever, run out of Thran Dynamo, and then Mind Twist my opponent for 7, activate Tezzeret for 3, and go get a Strip Mine and Strip Mine their Arcane Sanctum, attack them for 2 and pass. With a remand up, play my commander of course, and then leave a remand up and pass. Opponent does nothing. So charge and find an Enlightened Tutor and a Narset. So I go ahead and play the Narset, Enlightened Tutor for sword, use Narset to put it in my hand, run it out, replay Strip Mine, kill their land, draw lots of cards, sacking a Tezzeret in order to... so I sack the Tezzeret for 1 in order to get Skull Clamp, and then clamp and draw 4 cards plus 2 more cards off a Dark Confidant. Plus I draw 3 off a Brainstorm. Well, a combination of Brainstorm and Imperial Seal, though, puts together what I need, which was a Dak Faden, allowing me to steal their Lightning Greaves, equip it onto my commander, and attack. At this point I've got a sword on my guy. I've stripped mine my opponent's last land, and my opponent has exactly 1 card in hand. The sword's going to take it out of their hand, and then I'm going to untap all my mana. My opponent will drop from 22 to 18. I will, unfortunately, or to 14 rather, 22 to 14. And then from there, I can actually 3, 6, 9, play the Mana Vault, 12, 15. If I have enough artifacts, I can kill them on the spot. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 damage. My opponent would lose immediately. So at the end of this game, my opponent has no permanents, no cards in hand, and can get neither a permanent nor a card in hand ever again. So my opponent scoops, and that is total annihilation. Funny enough, if there was some theoretical card that cost 0 and drew multiple cards or something, and my opponent managed to draw this imaginary card, and they were able to get, let's say, I don't know, 0, draw 3, so an Ancestral Recall that costs 0. So they Ancestraled and got a land out and had 2 cards in hand. Well, I would still be able to take both cards out of their hand, because the sword would take 1, and then Dak Faden would target them with Narset out, making them draw 1 and discard 2. And then, of course, Strip Mine would kill the land. So there's redundancy to the lock as well, which is just crazy. Anyway, total demolish, obviously not a competitive thing there, but like I said in the beginning, after getting my butt handed to me a few times, I decided to stop messing around with anyone, be they serious or casual. I will give them full measure of respect and attempt to utterly annihilate them. And I managed to finish the night by doing exactly that. So hopefully you enjoyed watching these games, and hopefully the changes that I made do make sense to you. I realize it's not, a card like Felwarstone is just not as sexy as Tail's End or Archmage's Charm or whatever. But sometimes you don't need sexy. Sometimes you need mana. And this deck does a lot of really good, really gross stuff. Very powerful. And what it really needs is just to be able to do it, and to do it on time. And that's what a card like Felwarstone can assist with. So we'll see if the Signets make the cut. Maybe they're better. I don't know. I've been playing Felwar a long time now, and I've never been too disappointed with it. So, as always, though, let me know what you think, and perhaps the card will ultimately become something else. It'll be interesting to see. There's a lot more sets going forward, a lot more cards going forward that could influence what's in here, and I suppose if there's a cut that needs to be made, that could be the cut. Decklist is getting pretty tight, but if they print something awesome, we'll always find a way to make it work. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.